Perfect. We're recording. Well, we appreciate everyone again taking your time to be here tonight. This is the second meeting of this traffic calming project. If you weren't here the first time around, we're going to cover some of the same material. We'll try to go through it a little bit quicker, just to respect those of you who were here. But we do want to make sure everyone is caught up and is up to speed on the project, a little bit about the process that we use to develop these projects, and then really want to spend the bulk of the time talking about the proposal for Knob Road as it stands tonight, where we're going from here. I mentioned we are recording. If you're online and have questions, feel free to use the chat feature. Those of you who are in the room, if we show things on the slides and you want to make a comment or have a question, feel free to just stop me any time, and we'll talk to it as we go. We like for these to be a discussion as much as anything, so me just presenting information, but we'll certainly take it however you'd like that. I'm going to try to stay out of the way here. Sorry. All right, let's get started here. A little bit about traffic calming, and I will go through kind of three phases to this. We'll talk some about the procedures of this program and how we do the work, and then we'll look at some of the tools that we're going to use, and lastly we'll talk about the plan and the ballot process that is used at the end of this program. This is a residential street program. We've had a lot of discussions about Knob Road and its status. It is currently identified as a local street, and that's done by Metro's planning department. NDOT is a recipient of that nomenclature, so we almost always limit that to residential streets. We do focus on physical solutions. We know that nothing slows traffic down like putting a physical item in the roadway, and we are focused on reducing speed, not so much moving cut-through traffic or restricting cut-through traffic. That's very difficult to do, and sometimes it has a place, but generally we keep traffic where it is. We're just trying to slow it down, get it to operate on your streets safely. I failed to mention as well, my name is Jeff Hammond. I'm a consultant for the Nashville Department of Transportation. At the end of this, I'll put my contact information up there. My colleague here is Elaine. She's running the online meeting. And I mentioned Director Alarcon is here, and I was supposed to also mention Council Member Roberts was hoping to be here. She may come a little bit later. She's held up at the Planning Commission meeting as well. But both she and Councilwoman Murphy are very engaged in this program, in this project as well. I think we covered that. One thing we do like to mention is Hub Nashville. This is a great clearinghouse. We're here pretty strictly focused on traffic calming tools and techniques at this meeting and in this program, but we always want you to know there's a wealth of assistance and help if you have other needs, and that's not just NDOT, that's all areas, all departments in Metro. That's a great first call to make, or first login to make if you have issues that need attention, is hub.nashville.gov. Thank you. This is a very high demand program. We talked about that last time. We have Knob is one road that we're looking at. There are over 400 streets people have applied in to seek assistance. So speeding issues that you've noticed on Knob Road, you're not alone in that. A lot of people are having those. And unfortunately, I don't know if you can read that, but we only have the resources currently to look at about 50 projects a year. We do those in 2 application windows, and so this is one of 24 projects that were selected back in the summer that we are currently looking at now. The way we got here was a collection of data and prioritization process. We look at 4 main things. 2 of those we broadly characterize as safety issues. That speed is the big one, and also the crashes that have occurred on the street. So those make up about 70% of the scoring system. The other 30% is accessibility issues. The presence, or in your case, the lack of sidewalks. We do pay composite scoring ranked high enough that you were selected for the project. So we are looking at Knob Road from White Bridge to Fleetwood. That's the four-way stop. There where it becomes Russell, although I think it does become Russell a little in advance of that. And here's a picture of that. And so White Bridge, White Bridge to Fleetwood is here. White Bridge, the red line designates that. That just shows you that that's an arterial road. Charlotte is also an arterial. That's the highest category. We currently don't do any traffic calming at all on those streets. Collectors are the blue roads. Those typically have a little bit higher volume, a little bit higher speed, and are meant to connect local roads. And Knob Road, as I mentioned, is a local street here. So that's kind of, you know what a map of your neighborhood looks like, I'm sure. This is something that we did add for this presentation. We didn't show you this last time. It's a snapshot of the crashes that have occurred. This is from state data that Metro PD puts into their system. But we're looking at about 14 crashes over the years in this section that we look at. We've got more down here at White Bridge. We don't typically keep those. That's over 10 years, from 2012 to 2021. 10 years. The yellow markers are injury crashes. We put a little more weight on those. Those have typically been rear ends at some of these driveways. I don't have knowledge about every crash, but the summary is rear ends and then lane departures. People that have run off the road. One thing I noticed was something that we talked about at the last meeting. As you crest the hill and come down the hill into that turn, we did see a small concentration of crashes there. Not unexpected. It's a combination of a hill and a curve there altogether. Could be wet weather, could be winter. Light and dark plays a part of that. Animals sometimes play a part of that. Alcohol plays a part of that. So there's probably a little bit of all of those things that factor into there.
That problem is totally different. And there is a lot of time. And I know how we go through our actions out through interviews today. But until they ready.
So if you're calling in online, there's comments about some of these accidents may have been addressed through paving and other items. Yes, sir.
You didn't any speed at all. Animals,
yeah.
The street comment like you're talking about, for that cut out alcohol and animals, stuff like that.
So the question was, how does this relate to what we're proposing here? I would say there's a very high likelihood that it would. So when we look at lane departure crashes, rear end crashes, those are all speed related. You just think about it this way: if a deer does wander out in front of you, would you rather be going 40 or 25? And so it's that type of it may not correct the whole thing, but it's going to have some impact on the likelihood of those crashes.
And the data that you got here for 10 years, 14 incidents, how is that relative to other streets? Like, is that average, above average, below average, or what?
That's a good question, and we don't have knowledge about how it reflects on all streets countywide. I will say this: the crashes that you're seeing here are not a big part of why this project is in the list. It rated pretty low relative to all the other traffic calming projects. posted speed, that becomes a big difference. Yes, ma'am.
We were just talking about there, and to get that eliminated, our neighbors across the street who are watching online right now, or crash into their right post driveway, had lots of construction, it was abandoned for about a week while they were out of town this year. On Crossway, where was on Crossway? In the Fleetwood or no? Part of it will be going to not really, yeah, on the hill.
Somewhere right in here.
Yeah, I know this year.
That's where we live. We live right there. We live right on. I mean, your problem is the dad doesn't choose and he lives. No, it'd be 314 on the list of streets that have had accidents in that county.
314, yeah, so the comment was, again, that it did not rank high on crashes, and that's what I was saying. It is very low. That's not all, I just want to clarify, that's not all the crashes in Davis County. That's out of everyone who's applied into this traffic calming program. So it is low, and that's what I'm saying. It's not a big contributor to why we're here tonight. Okay, I don't know that. Yes, sir. You'll have to let me address the
Ambulance has to slow down to go over that speed bump. That's taking time away from him getting to me, from getting to him over there, or anybody in this room. Now, my wife is passed away, Matt.
If we could finish your presentation, I think that will help answer some of your questions, because the proposed speed cushions will address fire and rescue emergency. So let's just finish going through it, and then we'll be able to I'm sorry, I need to do that. I do want to get through so that we can think over and have all the information and then we can address all the questions.
All right, so we'll come back to that, and we can talk more about the dynamics of what we're proposing, a little bit about the process. We're here at meeting 2. We've progressed 2 circles since we were here back at the 1st of September. So anyway, that's really all. We go to the ballot next in construction, pending the outcome of this meeting. So where we are tonight, the plan has changed some since you may have seen it last time. It has not grown to 13 or anything like that. Okay, great. Sorry if I'm blocking things. We have maintained speed cushions as the bread and butter of this plan, as we do with a lot of plans around Nashville. Thank you. So speed cushions are what is still proposed. One of the 2 changes that we've made to this plan since we were here last time is that we're proposing a longer speed cushion. When we were here last time, we were looking at a 7-foot long speed cushion. That would be the dimension from here to here. So as the car drives over it, the shorter the speed cushion, the more abrupt it is, and the slower speed, that you feel comfortable going over it. When we lengthen that, you feel a little more comfortable going at a slightly higher speed over it. So we have lengthened that. They make a 7-foot cushion is what we proposed last time. The next level up is 10.5. 10.5 is what's used on Breslin. If you notice that, you may like it, you may not like it, but it is longer and more of a gentle speed cushion than what we had proposed initially. So that's one of the changes. So they're 6 feet wide. So when you see this dimension here, that is 6 feet, and so a car cannot straddle that. The reason there's a gap and the reason it is only 6 feet, back to your comment, sir, is for emergency vehicles. So I think we've got another image here showing that they have to do, they look holistically at safety, as does NDOT and all of Metro. So anyway, that's the rationale between the gaps in that. I'll talk a little bit more about the layout that we're looking at at each speed cushion location. A little more data that we wanted to get because there were some concerns about this we thought might be helpful is that we did do some travel time runs specifically on Breslin, given that it's one of the few places where we've used that longer speed cushion. You guys wouldn't have believed me if I told you, so I put 24.96 was the average speed that we measured as we did a series of travel time runs back and forth along Breslin. I say that because if I put 25, you say you're lying. The speed limit is 25. There's no way it would work out that perfectly, but I promise. When we did those travel time runs, you will see a fluctuation of speed. It's natural to encounter a set of speed cushions and speed up slightly before you get to the next one. And so you kind of have this wave pattern, and that's exactly what we see in that. We saw, on average, people get up to about 30 miles an hour, and then they slow back down when they get to the set of speed cushions. And so we show you some of that data here. But on average, I'll stop in just a second. I will. But on average, if we look at over about a 3/4 mile length, and the length to the Breslin project is very similar to the length of the project here, we're looking at about 25 miles an hour average.
What is the posted on the speed on Breslin?
I think 20. You talking about this one down to the little advisory? Normally we put, it won't say 10 to 15. It may say 10. It may say 15. 10. Typically we put 20 on those. Okay. So ours will typically say 20. And so this is what the data shows on that. We're not totally abandoning the feedback signage that you've got there now. Although in the location where it is among this series of speed cushions, we don't think it's as effective as it could be. And so what we have proposed is to take this sign that's on the northbound going towards Charlotte, and move it over on the other side of the hill. I'll show you that in just a second. That might make more sense. So we are keeping a advisory sign component to it. So just staying with that, here's the sign where it's located now in front of the church. Part of this plan would be to move that down to the other side of Knob Road where you're coming down a hill. As we showed last time, we have no speed cushions on that side of the hill. It's too steep. We don't put any speed cushions anything greater than 8, and that's 8% slope, and that grade is somewhere between 8 and 9%. So what we have done, the other major change, I told you one change we made was to lengthen the speed cushions. The other change that we made is that we took one of the speed cushions out that was near the top of the hill, and we spread the remaining 6 out a little further. So now there is not 7, there is 6, and they are a little bit further apart. So now we're right at 600 and just between 6 and 610 feet on average spacing apart. That's kind of the upper level of where we like to be. We think it's great for this street in the context that we're looking at. A lot of urban streets, I think I probably mentioned that we typically look from about 400 to 600 feet to make sure cars, as they ramp up speed, don't get too high before they encounter another speed cushion. So this in a glance, I think is the best view we've got of this project. You see White Bridge Road here, you see Kendall here, the daycare is here, I guess. Church is here. You've got Forestwood, and then we've got the last set just on the other side of Forestwood, and a speed feedback sign there. This one we're proposing to just remove, repurpose it elsewhere. I don't know that it'll have a lot of effectiveness there. Again, they're in the middle of the speed cushions. Do they not? Okay. It's good to know. We're ready for feedback. This is probably the
Okay, so they're not keeping the
Thank you.
question about one speed hump from White Bridge to Kendall, just looking at that spacing. So another thing to point out here, we obviously have to avoid intersections. We can't put one in the middle of an intersection, so we stay some distance from that. And we also have to watch driveways. We don't want to block anybody's driveway. We try to stay at least 15 feet away from people's driveways. So once you take out some of those things, and we're basically just, it becomes a spacing question.
Yeah, I don't agree with your space.
Do you think it should be more than that?
Oh, there needs to be more between White Bridge Road. There needs at least 3 White Bridge.
We can take a look at that spacing, but that's a good comment. One back here.
For the speed, speed indicator sign, will it be like in the middle of the yard, or will it be between
Yeah, the question is about where these feedback signs are located. We prefer to put it kind of, if there's a utility pole, we love to put it right in front of that. If we can be on a property line, we'd like to do that. But then we also have to look at, like we just pointed out, are there trees just totally covering it and they'll never get any sun? These are solar powered, and so we try to pay attention to that as well. So those are the main things that we're looking at as well. Of course, is visibility. We don't want to. We've got it in advance of the curve. We don't want to put it too deep into that curve. You won't see it until you're right on top of it. That's how we do that.
Why was there no posted city signs from Fleetwood all the way down to the church's property? Why would you not call traffic and ask them to make sure there's a posted speed sign coming from the West Nashville or White Bridge Road? There was absolutely no posted speed sign. I stopped a traffic sign. I thought it was but I got speed sign and it's like 2 weeks ago. Why was that not the first thing that people were taking the street? Someone saying, why did you not make sure that the posted sign was posted?
As a matter of course, that's not something that we do, nor do we look at, warning signs for curves and those kind of things. I understand. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering about the amount of traffic that's actually on that. By comparison with many other streets in the area, it is very low. And I don't know how the average speed is.
So I'll give you some of the statistics on it. The question was about some of the metrics of the street itself. It carries about 2,900 cars a day. I don't know if you think that sounds high or low. It's kind of mid-range, I guess. It's probably on the higher end, actually, for local streets that we're looking at. A lot of what we look at is in the 500 to 1,000. This is higher than that. The average speed, to differentiate what I talked about earlier, being the 85th percentile speed, the average speed is about 35. But what the industry uses is 85th percentile, and what that says is 15% of the cars that are out there are going faster than the 85th percentile speed, which is 42. So it's that 15% of people at which we say that kind of defines a speeding problem. If 15.
The other thing is, several of us here, they down other end, for thankfully they're not good news. But we go all the way from that end by Charlotte, all the way to White Bridge Road. So we're the ones that have to go over 6 areas fast enough there. Every time we decide we're going to go from our houses over to White Bridge Road. I have a question.
Yeah. So the question about enforcement is a big piece of what we call Vision Zero. It's a holistic comment from someone on the phone. So, ma'am, go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. And I was a little bit late to join, my apologies, but we actually just purchased a home on Rosleo, and I just have a question regarding the speed cushions. You know, have there been studies and other interventions to reduce the speed, because speed cushions are not ideal for wear and tear on your vehicle. They're unattractive. You know, in other parts of Nashville, like 12 South, I know that medians and landscaping and redirecting traffic so it's not one straight road is an option instead of the speed cushion.
Yeah, thank you. So there are a number of things that you can do, and that we presented at the first meeting some of those tools in the toolbox, but it really depends on the context of the street. This is very much a suburban context where this road is, I think, 22 feet wide. There's really no shoulder. It goes straight into a ditch. Setbacks are pretty large, larger lots. And so all of those things, create a context for us to work within. So when we have a limited pavement surface like that, and, there's not a lot of room to put bulb outs or chicane, which is kind of that zigzag effect you're talking about. Traffic circles, these intersections just aren't that wide, and so we have looked at some of those other tools, and given those constraints, as well as just the experience that we've had on streets like this with speed cushions, that's why we ended up with that. Good comment.
I put order of handle and knob, and so a lot of people I see walking their dogs and like pushing strollers, crossing knob from handle from either direction. So I'm curious how fast a car could go from the first speed cushion to the second one, because that's like personally where I care most about speeding. That's where I'm walking out there I live.
Mm-hmm. So I would have to look at that spacing, but given that data that we just showed, they're probably in the order. I mean, if I had to guess, in the order of 17, low 20s, maybe up to 25, I would guess. But I think down in here, I want to show you the specifics about this speed cushion, because your street here is wider than it is anywhere else. It gets wide after you cross the Kendall, as you know. So we have a little bit of a different configuration there. But anyway, given the spacing there, and the fact that this one is pretty close after Kendall, you'll already start to have sped down before crossing that one, I would anticipate.
Beginning to end, is there any data on how long it will take you to get from Whitefish to Charlotte?
Given this change, yeah, good question. So the question is, basically, what is the change in speed? How will this affect you in terms of travel time? I did look at that actually, and so this segment, if we look at where the speed cushions start down here at White Bridge Road, it's about 3,500 feet, which incidentally is about the distance of that Breslin project we were talking about. It's maybe a shade longer. But if we look at the average speed right now today, based on our data, the average speed, not the 85th percentile, the average speed I said was about 35 miles an hour. The average speed that we measured on Breslin was about 25. So you're talking about a 10 mile an hour difference. 10 miles an
solve the problem of speed, which makes everybody safer. Could you just help us understand what some of the trade-offs might be? You know, my concerns are around, you know, does it damage your car? Does it impact your home value? Are there things that you can help us understand, just so we understand both sides?
I'll try. I'm not a realtor. I don't know a lot about home value and how this may or may not affect it. Some people love it and think it'll make it go higher. Some people think it will not. We have not had any reports of car damage. We've got streets that have had these on them for probably 10 or 15 years coming up on it, and we just don't have that. I'm not saying it can't happen. If you hit these things extremely fast, you may bottom out and scrape, some fairing or something like that, but we just don't see that. I don't know if I should comment on the opposition to it. We hear a lot about just the convenience. We just talked about the travel time impacts of that. I think it may just be it's a convenience thing. I understand that people are opposed to this and can be opposed because of maybe it's a convenience, maybe it's an aesthetic consideration. So you're right. I mean, that's why we have this type of meeting, and that's why when we go to you're given the opportunity to vote against this as well. And so we try to be cognizant and an understanding of both sides of such a change, and that's why we do these types of meetings. We've got another meeting or another comment in the back here.
Okay, I live in the condo in Charlotte. I've lived there for 20 years, and before that time, I actually had an office on so their traffic is heavy on Charlotte. Well, every time, actually, but I do, turn on the deal with it, actually, but the deal. It's not a big way of getting to bring it over. And anything like that. And so, I can see I've done that for some years now. I actually been stopped by Dr. B. It's been a long time, but I have. But, and so the two things about that are, the value to everything are keep that down and understand thing, and deal with other people's reaction to it. So if I don't take that as non-approved, if I say, oh, Charlotte, and I and the many other people who recognize talking to you about it, oh, yeah, that's good. You very well use that street. We'll be going down to Charlotte, or we'll be maybe looking for another route. And that was that more traffic in Charlotte about definitely in Russia or
I don't think anyone minds you stayed on this street. We just want it to go slow, and so that's why we don't. We try to space these out. I mean, we could try to affect a very drastic change and put a lot of more than what we've shown, and really try to force traffic. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get it to slow down. Question is, have we had any that have been removed? It's been a long time. So just a little history on this program. Up until probably about 5 years ago, for the 10 years prior to that, we almost didn't know. We had two tools. We had signs and we had paint. And there was a lot of feedback from that. And nothing what this department was doing is effective. And so about 5 years ago, we started wading back into these types of devices. Since then, I'm almost positive we've had none taken out. The reason we went on about a 10-year hiatus is because there was a project in I think it was in the Green Hills area, but it's starting to go back a ways, that we didn't do a lot of planning back then. They just kind of showed up one morning and met with a lot of blowback. So that's why we don't do that anymore. But that's been a long time.
any traffic studies, you know, the Chick-fil-A being right there on Charlotte creates just a ton of traffic and congestion at all times of the day. Have there been any studies that potentially making that stop sign a right turn only, or even making it a dead end? Because the majority of the traffic is people cutting through.
I'm not aware. We have not done any traffic studies to try and determine which way traffic is turning in or out. Again, our objective is not to change those patterns as much as just to you know, change the behavior of traffic that is using it. Chick-fil-A may well have done a traffic study. It's very common that a new development, particularly Chick-fil-A, which tend to generate a lot of traffic and so forth, they will typically be tasked with doing a traffic study. I don't have any knowledge of that, whether they've done one or not.
So is that an option for NDOT to do a traffic study? Because if you said 2,500 cars are going through the street a day, it's not, the majority would not be residents that live on the side streets. It would be people using the street as a cut through.
Yeah. Certainly, you know, analysis can be looked at. It is. I mean, you can do a turning movement count, which will tell you how much traffic is going which way, but whether or not that's cutting through or what those people's ultimate origin or destination is it's a much bigger study, and it's very expensive to take a lot of time. We don't do those as a matter of course in traffic calming program. The answer to your question, though, is it could be done. We just have not done that for this type of a project. Another question from the room.
So I think you mentioned earlier that maybe we'll slow down traffic to reduce traffic. But do you expect a reduction in traffic? Do you know how much to the homeowners would expect it to be? Both slowing down traffic, we're really having fewer customers.
Yeah. So a question about you know, redirection of traffic. I'm sure it does happen, and it happens on some streets more than others. You know, when we do a project, we just got done validating one over in like a Sylvan Park, where it is a very traditional grid type network. If you do something on one street, it's much easier to impact the other street. Here, it kind of, as we talked about, if this street were to be cut totally and you had to find another way around, that's a much bigger ordeal. You now have to go a long distance out of the way. When we put these on here, my guess is we're not going to see a major shift in volumes. I don't know that. It's very difficult to predict, not knowing exactly where the origins and destinations are. There are other ways to get through here, and that might happen, but there aren't many, and they're not direct. So, you know, if it is a cut through now, I would expect that some of that will remain. Again, just hopefully it's slower.
Is
that where that name came from? Interesting.
And then they took that out. Took that like a while.
Yeah. It'll do that. That's because it's a four-way stop, you know, it kind of becomes a logical point to end the project. There is another application that is out there on that stretch of roughly there, and so I don't know what the data says offhand, but it wasn't aside to this one, but there is another application on that part. But just to keep a logical point. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I saw another question. Hand up here. I've got question is, you know, from this point, if the vote passes, how long does it take? I've got a slide here in just a second, and I'll show you some of that.
Numbers before and after.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. That would be interesting to know, but I don't believe it has anyone. Unless it was
traffic from Knob, you're going to be adding traffic to Norwood, which has a higher accident score. And some anything, but some of them are not great. Vine Ridge is what everything is at 30 miles an hour.
Is that Vine Ridge? Okay. So,
Yeah, 30 miles an hour speed zone, whereas you know, at the 30 miles an hour speed zone. Whereas, you know, our district handles more traffic safer. They have a higher traffic accident profile. You know, what you're doing about this project is you're diverting traffic over from a safe street to an unsafe street.
all right, Elizabeth, you have a question online?
Yes, thanks. I noticed on the map of accidents that there's expectedly a concentration around that hill where right before the four-way stop where there's the hill and the curve. Knowing that the speed humps are all kind of prior to that, what's like the anticipated effect for that particular stretch? Knowing that it's downhill, it's after all the speed humps are done, do we still think that's going to be a high risk area?
Yeah, question. Well, I mean, I'd like to say I hope not, but the one thing that we are doing is putting that feedback sign there. We hope that will have some impact. The data shows that it certainly does, at least initially. You know, people see that sign, they say, wow, I'm going 40 miles an hour and I probably shouldn't be, and they slow down. The longer term impact of that is, you know, probably decreases some. The more you drive past that thing every day and you quit looking at it after a while, probably. So, but you know, I think it's better than anything that we've got right there. We can't do, as I mentioned, speed cushions. They're just given that grade. There may be some curve warning signs that are warranted or something like that. But outside of that, you know, it's just a tough alignment to deal with. And I think that's probably at least part of the contribution to those crashes there. Got a question up front.
Yes. Would it be possible to have a crosswalk at the intersection of Knob and Kendall? I know people think that they're supposed to stop someone in a crosswalk. I mean, I've taught at Illinois University for many years, and we just was they had the signs in the crosswalk that said, you know, watch for pedestrians, and there were traffic on those signs. But
where we go from here. And this part is important as well. So I showed you, we've been working off kind of that cartoony image just a second ago, but I do want you to know that there is a formal set of design plans for these projects. This one's already been developed. This one kind of gives you a sense of what it looks like. So what we will do is once we're ready to go forward and ballot, whether that's now or whatever the consensus of the group is, we will post that online. That will be available for anyone to go in, click on, download, and look at as much detail as you want. Most driveways you can see, sometimes tree cover makes it a little harder, but so we also put, this one just says it, even with the poll number 904450001 at 5719 Knob Road. So if anybody lives at 5719, you probably know the poll I'm talking about. It's close to, in your front yard. And so that's where you can check that and see exactly where these are proposed to go. The other part that's important about this, and I mentioned I'd come back to it, is a diagram about the layout of these speed cushions. So again, it's a 22-foot road, and so you see how those are laid out pretty straightforward in the lanes on the road. But down here, that one set as we get down past Kendall, closest to White Bridge Road, it's wider than that. I think it's 36 feet wide from curb to curb. So some people park on the side and things like that. We're not recommending any of that change, but we can't just put two cushions there, or people will drive around it sure as anything. We know they will. So the only difference there, though, is to be consistent, so that you're always consistently just seeing that same two cushion layout. We would put plastic delineators on either side of that, two of them on either side, to block that remaining 10 feet that's out there. We got to do something, or that looks like a lane, and they will certainly go around it. So those would keep people from driving around it. Is the idea. We would have two on both sides of that. We just talked about that. Yeah, but we also just heard nobody stops down there at Fleetwood, and so it's a lot of so that's why we don't use stop signs as traffic calming. It just doesn't work.
All the money is not much talking. In that context, all those plans got put on 51st North between Charlotte and up there on Centennial for good traffic calming.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that. I will tell you there has been a past practice where stop signs were thrown out as traffic calming. But stop signs are not traffic calming techniques that we should be practicing using. And actually, they do not follow this manual, as I mentioned in UTCD, which I always say practicing too. But it's very important to understand there are criteria that are established. Traffic signs should not be used, stop signs should not be used as a traffic calming practice unless they are warranted. So we do the warrants, we do look at them, and if they're warranted, we won't even ask you. If a stop sign is warranted, we're going to throw it up without even asking, because it's warranted. If it's not warranted, we're going to look for another type of traffic calming practice to recommend to your community. So in the past, yes, sir, there was some movement where they did, but studies have shown that when you put up a stop sign that actually isn't warranted, it leads to more crashes and more serious injuries, more rear-end crashes. So that is the reason why the studies are required for warrants, there's criteria established, and if you meet them, again, we're not asking, we're putting them up. But if it is not met, then we're looking for different options to provide the traffic calming practice. Yes, we can put up the plastic delineators. You're still right, we're just this gentleman I have to go over there.
Well,
It's not stands the width. Okay. Yes, an emergency vehicle will be able to have access. Remote access
presented the information in a couple of meetings like this. Everyone that lives on the corridor, or that I should say that owns property on the corridor, that's a residential use, that's not vacant, that's not under construction, all these things, will get a card, much like what was sent out for this meeting. It looks like this. It's got a QR code on it, and you get that card in the mail, you scan it, and it takes you straight to a Nashville.gov ballot site, okay? And it's at this ballot site where you can say, we have a little code there that tells us you are who you say you are, and you live at this address, you vote for it, you vote yes or no. At the end of 6 weeks, we take all the results of that, and if 2/3 of the people who have voted vote yes, we'll do the project. If it's not 2/3, we would not do the project as we proposed it here, okay? It's important to note that this is sent to the property owners of these addresses. I don't know if there's a lot of rentals here or not. Some neighborhoods have a lot of rentals, and so that's an important distinction. There is one parcel here that has the driveway up. We would consider all of those. They own that parcel in common, which does front our street, and so those would all receive a ballot as well. I think I've covered all that. Any questions about that process? Yes, ma'am.
But you're really actually telling us the people from Fleetwood down to Charlotte have no vote.
They do not have a vote. That's right. So here's Fleetwood. So all of those people.
So for the most of it, the whole deal. And yet we have to,
I wouldn't say you're the most effective, but you're effective. Let me just say with the current comment was about who gets the ballot and who does not. The rationale behind that is, it would be very difficult to say people in Forestwood are not affected, Stoneway Trails affected. A lot of these people are affected, some more than others. So the policy has been just to make that as clear a process as possible. We ballot the people who front the affected streets, the limits of the street. And the rationale behind that is these are the people that are putting up with the higher speeds. These are the people that are trying to turn in and out of their driveway or walk or do whatever they're trying to do. And if I live down here, I see the inconvenience, but I don't see the speeding, and therefore I'm going to vote against it every time. So, it would be very difficult to draw those lines and have a real fair way to look at that. That's kind of the philosophy behind it. But I certainly hear you. We'll know when we put it to the ballot whether it's popular or not. That's the beauty of it. We can tell if this was a bad idea and people vote against it, we'll know that.
Question on the phone whenever ready.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Now behind the question was why 6 cushions. It's just an engineering design that says this would make it effective.
What you're catering to. And you're leaving out the people that live on the cul-de-sac, Kendall, and Lansing, and the bottom part are not. Rushing go. And these people use the street every day. You let them out of a boat. This is a nice program here that you're presenting.
Okay.
It's not fair.
I understand. I'm sorry. That's some policy. We have another question from someone on the phone here. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, yeah, thanks. My brother and his future wife just moved into West Leo, and he couldn't make it to the call, but he is interested to learn about the possibility of a roundabout there at West Leo, Knob, and Fleetwood, if that would help with people following the stop sign, and maybe people trying to recover their speed from the speed cushions getting on West Leo, and maybe trying to recover some of that speed if a roundabout there would help continue to slow people down.
say, the question was about the design speed of the road, and it was, as was pointed out, down on the White Bridge Road end, it's a different street. It's much more of an urban street. It's hard to say when these properties were platted and when this road was built. Typically, when you're working in more of a suburban area like this, it's not uncommon to see, when you say a design speed, that's the speed at which the road can be traveled safely. In simplistic terms, it's very common that a road is posted something below the design speed. So if the design speed was 35 miles an hour, that's the engineering. That's how sharp they make the curves. That's how they embank the road so you can go around those curves. That's what they're designing it at 35. I'm just making up a number. It's not uncommon, though. You'd come out and you'd post it at 30. You post it at 25. You post it at something other than that. And we're kind of learning what that has done in our communities over the years. I mean, the speed limit, we all know we can go a lot faster than 70, can we not? There are people that are out there tonight doing 90, and they're going to get to where they're going fine. The road is built to handle speeds like that. But we don't want people going that fast. And so we posted at something often less than that. I agree with you. I would say this is probably more like a 30-mile-an-hour design speed, and this could be 35. You know, as we saw, 15% of the people today feel comfortable doing 42 miles an hour on it. So, you know, what the design speed is, I can't say, but it's higher than 25. We know that. Most roads are.
At a higher speed than what was ever been posted. And, you know, now when we look at planning and all of this design, I think many folks are recognizing it kind of also brings a lot of quality of life. So someone is backing through a community and where you can't enjoy your residential area because you have people driving at an excessive speed, you just lose the quality of life. And so I would say one of the things we're actually doing better now is we're going back to the design industry to fit the speed we want it to be. But that's not in the past. It's in the past for many decades.
Yeah, you confirmed the previous question about no clouds or no
Yeah, that question. So I don't know if this is a plowed street. Y'all know, so it is. What we are doing, the more of these are coming into the neighborhoods, and we're in a process right now where we've got a lot of these. The installation had started, I don't know, a couple of months ago, but we spent a lot of time with meetings like this, with petitions, and we got to the point where we're ready to install. So a lot of these are being installed now. So our plow drivers are much more cognizant of the fact that there's more streets than ever, and it's going to continue to grow that have these. So a couple of things. I don't think we have a sign at every location on this. We typically sign when we're in between street locations so that anybody who is turned onto the street knows that there's a speed cushion coming up. But there are certainly signs at the beginning and end. That's a good clue number one to our plow drivers. Say you're fixing it. If they've never driven this before, which is unlikely, some of these guys have been with Metro a long time and do a great job and know these streets very well, then they will see that, and that'll be their first indication. And then when they see these cushions, the majority of them will have a sign at the individual location. So they'll still plow the street. That's good to know, and I would imagine they just lift the plow up when they come to are certain ballots that won't, or certain properties that won't. WSMV won't. The church won't. We only ballot residential properties. I think we do. I was about to say, I think we do have the daycare. We'll take. They won't get one either. Yeah. So anything that we have on there that we know about, that's other than a residential property. If there's a vacant lot, there may have been a vacant lot on it. I don't remember. I don't know. I have to look, but one vote per property per household. That's right. All right, coming back to your question too, so you asked about this. So, the voting could take place very soon. The plans are done; they just need to be posted. We can open the vote. We can talk about whether or not we're ready to do that. So, we put on here 2 to 3 weeks. We really don't need that much time. We're ready to send the postcards if that's what the neighborhood wanted to do. We leave that voting period open for 6 weeks. We close it at 6 weeks. We look at the results. If the results are pro-traffic calming, we then order the materials. That's taken us about 2 months right now to get the rubber in, and then we get it scheduled to install. We'd like to give ourselves another 8 weeks for that. So that's kind of the time frame we're looking at. Some people ask about that. May put us kind of still in the, I don't know, we may be out of the cold weather at that point, but we can install these during the cold weather. But hang on just a second. We got a question up front.
My question is, will we be voting, I might say it this way, up or down on a definite project? It's not as if the discussion here tonight is going to cause any different reconfiguration of where these are or any other alternative. What we've seen tonight is when we voted up or down.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is, and I don't think this affects the plans, it doesn't affect the voting, but if we looked into this crosswalk and we said, oh, it's a good idea, we wouldn't change this. That'd be the only thing.
The notes that I took for us to continue to look at, we only enhance what is the feedback today.
Is there any possibility that you could look at that and back the fact that the people and the planning development want this, and the rest of the district actually doesn't, from what I can tell? And then what they want, but it's not.
Now, did you get a vote for the rest of the district?
I haven't. We are going to take a vote. I understand it's more to set out the plan. I guess where we would take the problem for the people who and not
I think we need to delay this, the voting and what have you. I think Mary Carolyn and Jeffrey Murphy need to be here, and or at least check with the individuals on the street. I think they need to be involved in this. I don't think they need to respond to something.
So, if I can speak to that, I'm actually been texting with Councilmember Roberts. She's actually has wanted me to give her apologies for not being able to make it. She's just been stuck over the planning meeting, and she's still there. So she just wanted me to share that. So, and I'll also share, we have, are having conversations with both of the council members. And so I would say that I would highly recommend that any concerns or issues that you reach out to them because they are reaching out to us. Okay. Yeah.
Do you know if we have all the finance man have the address of the secrets of the indicators?
Yeah, the plan does show where the indicator sign is proposed as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How is it guaranteed that only people who
The question is, how do we know who's voting and are they the right people? We put we do the best we can, with voter I don't know, security. We put a little code down on the bottom of the card when it goes out, and it's a kind of a randomized code, just letters and when you go in there to vote on the website, you'll type that code. That lets us know at least that the card came from the right mailbox. The vote came from the right mailbox. So hopefully we don't have to go any further than that. But it's worked well so far. I like to give this statistic. I don't know for what it's worth, but it's kind of interesting to me. So to date, we have balloted 37 projects, 37 streets. It's 33 have passed, 4 have not. So for your information, that's where we are. When we get to this point on these projects, that's the record to this point. No. Yeah. The people that, or the question was, is the only way to vote using basically the QR code in the website? That's an excellent point. I'm glad you mentioned it. It is not. And so when you get that card in the mail, there's also a phone number you can call, and you can talk to someone. I believe it goes straight to, we'll put this up, Gil Thomas, who is there, who is NDOT program manager there on staff. You talk to him and just say, I live with this, I got this card, here's my code, here's how I want to vote. He logs that in for you. So we do have a phone option as well. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's our contact information. This is me, Jeff Hammond, and feel free to reach out to either or both of us. If you think of other questions that didn't get asked or want to have comments. I don't mean to stop the conversation, but I did want to just make sure we get that. It's 10 minutes till 8. So. Don't buy it. Okay. I'll run through the calculation if you want to do it. I love the math. They can kind of straddle it. We're not quite done. We have another question in the back. Six weeks. I don't know. We're seeing about a 30% response rate, which I think is pretty good on average. I think that's probably higher than the presidential election, honestly. So, yeah, seems to be working. For those of you who are online, thank you for joining. Are there any other comments or questions from online? I should ask that. Okay. All right. We're going to stop recording. We appreciate your time as well. Thank you for joining us. And this meeting, this is for everyone. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted. The first meeting is also online. If you go to Metro's YouTube site, Channel 3, Metro 3